Be ready. Here we go.
All right, cool. So guess let's get started here. First of all, welcome. Thank you all for coming. So I'm Nathan. I'm a product designer based in DC. I've mostly worked for startups, but I've also worked for big companies. So I started working with Curious back in, I guess, November of last year when some of the founders came to me and they wanted to start sourcing ideas from an Instagram page that I created. And so we kind of built like this whole platform to kind of give developers who want to kind of bootstrap a project just a place to come and think of new ideas. And so that's still in the works. That's an MVP right now. We're still building that, but it's come a long way since November. Um, so I guess first to start off, what is product design? Um, it's kind of funny because this is one of those fields that it's so crucial right now in technology and apps and really anything, but it's not really well defined, which is interesting. So I guess I'll just like pick on somebody random. Um, Michelle, Michelle? Can you talk? Michelle, what do you think product design is? Or do people actually participate? I don't know, Leo.
Sometimes they do.
Okay. Well, does anybody want to throw out an answer? Who can talk? What do you think product design is? All right. Well, then I'm just gonna keep going. If nobody, it also might be one of those things that's like just hard to define anyway. So, um, oftentimes, oh, here we go. So Muhammad, okay, open in queue. Okay, so mic doesn't work. So do you wanna type your response?
Hello?
Hey, Muhammad, do you want to answer this one?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, all right. Well, so often what happens is in the tech world, before you actually go out and code things, the product designer's role. Oh, here we go. Product design could be the designing of the UI and user experience. Yep, perfect. Design the product to align with business goals. Yep, that's like a textbook definition. That's good. Okay, these are good answers in the chat. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the big thing is that um, people used to always talk about like user experience and how we need to just make the best experience for people. But recently in the tech space, there's been a big shift into thinking about this as an actual product that is a big part of the business. And so that's actually like the perfect answer is designing products to align with business goals and make for the best user experience. So that's exactly what we're basically trying to accomplish is not only do we want the experience to be really good, and that's kind of why the term user experience has been sort of going out of style, and why product design is kind of becoming the new way that we like to define our role and what we're doing. So if you go to any website, any jobs page, it's going to say hiring product designer, hiring product designer, because this is sort of the new role that works alongside developers. So, why I think it's important, I think design and code is a superpower. So, a lot of you know how to code or maybe are learning how to code. But if you can learn how to code and design, it's just the key to bootstrapping your own project and hopefully making something that people want and that's going to be very successful. And so, kind of a good example of that is has anybody ever heard of Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase? So this just became $1 billion company. They just recently had their IPO, and Brian during an interview said something really interesting where he says, you know, nobody gets the product right first, the thing that you're building. So when you're coding, you're gonna have to do a lot of iteration, and you're trying to find what's called like, product market fit. And so oftentimes what's going to happen is you're going to have to code the product like 10 times or more. Some people never get it right, and that's very expensive if you have to hire this out to an agency or a team. So you have a lot of power if you're able to not only come up with the idea and code it, but think about the human aspect of how does this actually relate to people, you know? And so that's why, once again, it's a superpower if you can do both design and code at the same time. So let's get into tonight's mission. This is what we're going to be doing for we're going to try and make car services easier for users. And so we're going to redesign the DMV. Is anybody here American? I'm sure there's lots of Americans here. I know that Curious is a Canadian, is found in Canada, but I'm sure many of you are from America. And so if you are an American, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but this is one of the worst days of everybody's life in America, is trying to get everything registered for their cars. And I didn't choose a crazy product. I wanted to choose something that I think some of you are probably experiencing or have experienced, which is trying to either get a new license or trying to find a service or how to find how something works. So we just got a question: is the DMV like AutoPack? I don't know what AutoPack is. Is that something that is that the Canadian version of the DMV maybe? So basically, everybody hates the DMV. I'm just gonna say it how it is. It's awful. I every day that I go, I'm just frustrated, and it's rare to talk to somebody that just love going to DMV and enjoy it. So to show you some proof, this is what the DMV website looks like right now. And you can copy this link, or you can just Google DMV. I think this is Virginia's branch, and it's pretty clear that it looks like they haven't updated it probably since 1996. Or maybe it's just they updated it once and just felt we don't need to update it ever again. And as you can tell, it's really difficult to like understand exactly what you're doing, where you're going, and it just doesn't meet up to modern standards and how far UX has gone in the past few years. So that's kind of why I thought it was an interesting challenge for us to look into. So I guess we'll jump into it. Competitive analysis. So has anybody ever here done competitive analysis or know what competitive analysis is? Yep. Okay. Cool. So the way you can kind of think of competitive analysis is it's really just a way to figure out the landscape. Yep, exactly. Analyzing competitors of people with similar products. That's perfect definition. So the best way to think about it is whenever you're in the field, there's going to be a lot of people who are trying to do the same thing, whether it be a competitor or a startup. And so it's a way of just finding out the landscape, like the lay of the land, who's doing what are the different products, what are the patterns that they're using, what makes their product better. So if we could think about this like in terms of, imagine that we just got a government grant and we said, you get to redesign the entire DMV from scratch, and we want you to compete and be better. So where we would start is actually by thinking about who's doing car services or checkout services in general. And I think it's kind of the beginning of research, and it's an easy way to figure out what's honestly really just what's out there. So I'm going to try and make this interactive. It sounds like people are having troubles with the mics. So I guess we'll start with this line first. And if you guys want to just type in the chat, what do you guys think that are good products for reservation? So I put Calendly. I think I'll just put it in here before somebody says it. I think Airbnb is an obvious one. Does anybody else want to throw one out? You can say it in the chat, or you can just call it out. Trivago. Okay, that's a perfect one. Great. How about I'm trying to think what's a really good one. So we could think maybe we're on vacation, maybe we need to get a rental car. We could say, I think Uber is possibly a good example of that. Yeah, Lyft is a good one. So that's a good 5. We can do one more if anybody wants to throw one out. If not, I think these are all pretty good. Yeah, okay, we'll end with Postmates. I think that's a good ending. Cool. So yeah, these are all really good. So I think that's a solid list for just reservations. Now, where can we find visual design? And let's make it more specific for cars. I think this one would be more fun because most people, it's easier to think of cars. So Tesla is an obvious one. We could say like BMW. What else? What do you guys think are? Yeah, Mercedes. I think that was going to be thrown out pretty soon. That's a good example. Anything else? Ford. Yep. Jeep. Yep. Really, I feel like any of these are really good. And we'll end with Porsche. I think that'll give us enough. That'll give us a great start. So yeah, these are all really good for visual design. And so we're thinking about like, how does the car look when it's laid out? What is the composition of the car going to be like in here, right? Okay, so this one should be fun. What brands do you just love? And it can be anything, you know, it can be a clothing brand. It can be, yep, Apple, of course. Apple is a great one. Notion, yes. Curious. I'm not going to put Curious just because it's just too, everybody just loves it too much. Okay, Microsoft, Samsung. Yep, so much love. Okay, there we go. Samsung, Microsoft. Yeah, so these are all just like very lovable brands, and so you're already connected to these. Yep, and of course Nike. I knew Nike would get in there. So great. This is like a great list. So let's do one more. Okay, so this one could be a little bit more challenging. I gave us a good start here. What are good existing car products? So Turo is the car brand that helps it's like a reservation company, kind of like Airbnb but for cars. But what can we think of that are other good apps or ways to kind of get a car? I think there's Zipcar. This one is a little bit trickier, isn't it? We could put Lyft in there again. Does anybody have anything else? Oh, Get Around, perfect. That's a good one. I'm too young for this. I don't have my license. Princess Auto, Hertz. Oh yeah, actually Hertz is I've been on their website recently. It's actually not too bad. Let's see, can we get one more? I know this one's a little bit trickier because we might have to do some Googling. If you want to do some Googling, that's fine, but I think we're okay at 5. So I think we have a pretty good list. And what's good about the way that I think we broke this down by doing it by category is that by doing it like this, we're not just gonna be looking at the same stuff. We're not just gonna say, oh, I'm just gonna look at Lyft and Uber because those are 2 successful car products. We're able to think about what is a brand that we're connected to. What are brands that have good car visual design? And so now that we have a list of things, we can actually start doing the heavy lifting of competitive analysis. And there's many ways you could do this. Since this is a digital product and it's going to involve a lot of visual design, I really like to use a Chrome plugin called Go Full Page. 10 out of 10 recommend downloading this. So I'm going to put this in the group chat just so if you guys want to add it. And I'll put this whole thing, this whole Figma file up in the chat later. But definitely check out this plugin that we're about to use. And I'm about to actually show you why I think that this is. So I'm going to stop sharing Figma for a second. I'm going to start sharing my Chrome. So let's think about some of the products that we just looked at. I think one of the really cool ones is Zendesk. I think Zendesk is going to be an interesting reference for us. So I'm going to share my screen. Share a window. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I love Grab SVG. I have that one too, Stephen. So I'm going to share my screen, a window. Okay, so can everybody see Zendesk? So what's so cool is that with this plugin, so obviously they have a beautiful brand. They took something that was really not that interesting, customer support and customer solutions and all that. And they just did a really good job of making the brand look really cool. And so this can be inspiration for us. Like they did such a good job of making something boring really interesting. So all I do is I click the plugin. It's going to take a screenshot of my entire page. So now I have it, and I can download it and drop it directly into Figma. And so now that it's in Figma, I'm just going to put it, and you'll see after we take a few more screenshots, I'm going to reshare my Figma and kind of show you how I'm laying everything out. So there you go. So which one should I take a screenshot of next? How about, I think I kind of like Hertz. I like whoever threw it Hertz. I think that was a good suggestion. So let's do Hertz again. So yeah, of course, Honey comes out. That's a great plugin too if you guys want to get that. So, oh, too soon, sorry. All right, we're gonna take a screenshot of Hertz. Hertz is obviously a little bit more practical, a little bit less visual, but I think it's gonna be a good reference for us. All right, so we have Hertz. Let's do just one more really good one. Is there a product that you guys really want me to take a screenshot of? That you're like, this is one that we have to see, that you're like compelled for, besides Apple? I know it's Steven, so you're always talking, you're always passionate about that. But how about, I think for good measure, let's do Tesla, just because it's going to give us that beautiful visual design that we like. So Tesla. All right, we're going to take Tesla. And let's see, let's do Model S and screenshot. Wow, there's a lot well, this is a crazy one. It's interesting how like this plugin is interacting with the code right now. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to download this and drop it in there. Okay, going to bring this down. Okay. And we'll go small, just in case. All right, cool. Steven says, in this case, you're just taking pictures of the homepage. Shouldn't you take pictures of the platform normally? Yes. So Steven, I actually did think about that. Right now, I don't feel like I should have logged into a product, but you're right. Normally you should be on the platform. Like, what is the actual like utility side of the product that you're trying to get across? But for this instance, it's okay. I mean, we're just trying to get an idea of how to do this process, but yes, normally you would. So design for developers. Okay, so we're back into Figma. All right, so let's start the competitive analysis. So I already got us started. Here are some questions that you're going to want to ask when you're starting is, what's good about the product? What's bad? What could be better? Are you confused? Is everything easy to find? And because with these sites that we just took screenshots of, we can kind of treat these as our first prototype. Everybody has made mistakes. All these products are making mistakes in some way, and all of them have done something that are making them really strong and successful. So what we want to do is kind of capture what we think is great about these platforms. So let's start with Hertz. I think this is an interesting one because it's got a lot of function and a lot of, just on the homepage is kind of like what Steven was saying, has a little bit of that function. So if anybody wants to say anything in the chat, what do you think is good about the way that Hertz product works right now? And once again, feel free to either call something out or just type in the chat so I could put it into Figma. And I'll zoom in even more so you can see it. So what do you like about it? What's good? Is it confusing? And if nobody answers, I'm going to pick on Steven to the color scheme looks nice. Okay. So what do you like about the color scheme? The color scheme, Michelle? Very simple. Good contrast. Yep, I agree. I think the contrast level is good. So that's something that we might want to take note of. We're going to be designing this for the whole United States of America. So we probably want to make sure that our contrast levels are good. Contrast levels. Okay. Yep, allows the main parts of the site to be easily seen. I think that's good. Yep, all very good. I like the numbered steps. Input fields have concise labels as well. That's great. I'm just going to copy that directly from the comments because I think that's just a great point. So, number steps. Yep, that's great. We can clearly see the website. We can clearly see the section of the website navigation bar. Great. Yep, I think that's really good. Contrast, clear emphasis, contrast puts clear emphasis on the form. Great. Once again, I think these are all just like really good points. So yeah, I think these are really good points, and they're really great. And we're talking about a lot of UX, which is good. So this isn't necessarily the most beautiful site in the world, but it works really well. And I feel like if you wanted to get a car, you're gonna be able to get a car pretty easily on Hertz. I actually did it last week, so I know that it works pretty well. And the page is not overwhelming. That's good. So I'll put that in here. Yeah, these are all really good. So I think this is a good start just for Hertz, mostly talking about the UX. And so we're going to put all the notes down. So now we can do some kind of the fun part. Let's do it with Tesla because I think it's pretty relevant to what we're doing because this is a car company. From a visual design perspective, what do we like about this image? What do you think Tesla did really well here? And obviously, when you compare that to what the DMV is, and I'll bring the DMV back in just to kind of show the difference. What do we think Tesla did very well compared to how the DMV is showing images? You know. Vertical blocks, concise, clear, padding. Images are colored, yes. All this is great. The visuals, vibrant, yes. Yes, everything. Okay, Tesla puts I like that one. Tesla puts specific attention on each image. That's a really good, because that's a UX and a visual design thing at the same time. Yes, that is like a perfect answer. That's kind of what I was hoping somebody was going to say. Yeah, visuals are really vibrant, grab your attention without being, yes, all really good. So I agree with this. Totally. Images, big space. The images feel like an afterthought. The images don't feel like, yes, you're right. They take kind of like center stage. The images are kind of the hero. You know, the product, Tesla doesn't have to give you any crazy illustrations. They're not giving any, they're not messing around. They just say, our products are so cool. It's basically the hero of the entire site, you know? Padding is good. This is clear. I'm just going to screenshot this entire thing because everybody just threw up like so much good stuff. Great. It's like there's just so many good things said here, so we're just going to put it all together. Cool. That's really good. All right, so let's do one more. Let's just do this last one quickly. Zendesk. What do you think? And what I like about Zendesk is that it's a very similar situation that we're in right now, right? Because we're trying to think about taking something that's really boring and kind of hated, which is the DMV. And most people don't enjoy customer support. It's something they have to do. People have to do the DMV. So what do you guys think Zendesk did so well? How did they transform something that was so boring and made it interesting? And kind of what can we learn from what Zendesk did? All right. If we don't get any answers, once again, I'm going to pick on Steven because he's really smart. Steven, what do you think? What do you think Zendesk did to become like a market leader and it was once considered like a boring field? What did they do so well?
Well, there's people who commented. So they say clear title is easy.
Oh,
MBI, lots of
oh my gosh.
backspace.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I was not scrolling down. Yes, there's lots of really good. Okay, there's a lot of really good ones. So I'm just gonna there's so much feedback that just came in, so I'm just gonna put this all on top because I think this is all really good. Steven is so smart and cool. Their website looks well more organized. Yes. Once again, huge contrast to the DMV, huh? Lots of white space, clear titles. Yes. So basically everything that is being said here is really it's like kind of hitting the nail on the head as far as what I think propelled them to be where they are today. But in primary action, yes. Man, yeah, that was so much. Yeah, see everything. You guys know all this stuff. Color combination is fire. Yeah, these are all like great answers. This is really good. So we have a lot of analysis, and I went ahead and did Turo just to kind of get everything going because it's so similar to I think kind of your standard tech website and tech product. Imager person smiling. Oh, we still have a lot of really good ones coming in. Imager person smiling. Hours of CS has taught me so much. Man. Okay, so this is obviously when I do this, usually it's like 50 brands. It's like so for example, right now I'm redesigning a kind of a crowdfunding source. So I'm looking at Kickstarter and I'm looking at Indiegogo and all the investor platforms, and it's literally 50. And so this is kind of a small piece of what you would do in the situation with competitive analysis, and you just want to basically take note of everything because when you look at something like this, the reason you want to take notes and kind of notes in general is that you're kind of you might forget about it later, and it's good to come back and see everything that we've written down. And in your brain, you're going to start processing what the landscape really looks like. It's like what does the car space and the rental space actually look like when we have these notes, and what are they doing wrong? What are they doing right? You know, and so normally I'd say just step away for a little while and come back and let your brain kind of process all of that competitive analysis we just did. But because we only have 2.5 hours, we're just going to jump to the next thing. So let's move on to sketching and wireframing. So who here, do you guys ever start with sketching or wireframing? And if you do you use Figma or do you go to pen and paper? I personally, I think the tools have gotten so fast that I actually feel like I'm just as fast with Figma as I am with pen and paper. But I still, most industry experts will tell you always start with pen and paper because the hand is free and the ideas can flow out very fast when you're just going on your sketchbooks. And so if anybody wants to do this part of the activity with me in Figma, they're free to do so and share the link in the chat. I don't know if anybody will do that. I wasn't planning on anybody doing that, but I think feel free if you feel like you have an idea and you just can't wait to get it out. Depends on how lazy I am. Yeah, exactly. So if you want to join me and do this, feel free to like take a screenshot and post it onto your Figma or something, or just don't. I don't really, or just watch. Doesn't matter. So it's always important to start in this level of fidelity. And so people usually they argue all the times about what the different kinds of fidelities are. I think I should have done this earlier, but I'm gonna drop something in the chat just so that we can all, or in the Figma, so we can all see kind of where this argument, or not necessarily an argument, but usually what the industry thinks about the different levels of design. So this is kind of like where we are right now. And I think I usually go straight to here. Some people say go here, and I do that sometimes, but it's important to start at least here and try to avoid, if you can, going right to high fidelity. And so this is like low fidelity, mid fidelity, and high fidelity. And the reason is that usually your first solution isn't right. And if Nick is still in the chat, Nick would call this the first pancake. So you guys know, oh good, Nick's still in the chat. So Nick, can you explain first pancake to us? I don't even know if Nick's able to talk. Yes, Nick says first pancake is usually terrible. That's right. So you need to figure out, yeah, then it gets better. So your first pancake is awful. And then as you're going, you figure out, oh yeah, I need to put on there more, or I need to add more salt, more butter. And so when you think about it, your first designs are kind of like making pancakes. You wanna make sure that your pancake, you didn't put all this time putting all the whipped cream and the chocolate on it, and just to find out that the actual pancake was awful. So start out with the lower fidelity before you start. Okay, so this is where we're going to intersect also with what we just did before, which is competitive analysis. So let's look at all of our notes, right? And I think Hertz is going to give us a really good idea. So when we look at Hertz, we said, okay, it uses a great contrast level, allows for the main parts to be seen. Yep, I think this is all really good. And then let's also look at what we thought of Turo. Yeah, I said the search bar is really nice up top. There's a strong use of illustrations. There's a nice type. So you can see that we're already starting to generate ideas here. And one thing to keep in mind is that nobody ever starts from zero. And that's kind of a principle of design, or when you're doing anything creative, is that everything is just a copy of a copy. And so when you think about it, like the first person to ever make a website was probably looking at print design. He was looking at magazines. The first person to ever make TikTok was really just looking at Instagram, right? And he said, I can make Instagram better by adding an algorithm. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually steal this section from Turo. And yes, you don't have to, that wasn't wrong. I literally am just stealing this. And so we can start to think to ourselves like, well, Turo did a really good job. I can find everything on Turo easily. So what is it that makes Turo so good? And I think it's because the flexibility of the search bar, right? I think when you want to go into a DMV, you're probably thinking to yourself, there's 100 things you have to do, right? You could be getting your license, you could be getting your permit, you could be in legal trouble having to deal with something legally, and there's just basically an infinite amount of things that you could be doing when you go into the DMV. And so I think, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, it's probably going to be much easier just to have a way to search, right? I can just search for anything that I want at the DMV, right? So this is going to be kind of our first prototype. And here's a pro tip: whenever you're in Figma, download the Material Icons community, and you can get any icon you want pretty much instantly. So this is pretty awesome. So we want a search bar. Yeah, and then look at that, just drops right into there, and I have a search bar. So bang, pretty fast. So I think that's going to be kind of our first thought. Let's go with the search bar. Now, Hertz takes kind of a different approach. It's very specific. And so maybe we're thinking to ourselves, you know what? Maybe it's not actually people have an infinite amount of things to do. Maybe 90% of people just want to do 3 things, and we could put the 3 things up top with a specific form for each thing, and that will be maybe a more optimized design. And so then we're not pigeonholing ourselves into just being a search bar, you know? So I'm just going to steal this, right? And once again, I'm literally stealing it. And so I'm going to put this here. And so I'm going to say, okay, here we go, DMV. So our second round is going to be, oh, sorry, delete it. We're going to just add a form, and I'm just going at the mid fidelity level here, right? So form, form 2, and somebody, who was it that made the comment? They said, I really like that it's numbered. It's just a 1, 2, 3 step, you know? So 1, 2, 3, right? So I think this is, this might not be a bad approach, right? And so maybe it's a tab, right? Maybe it's just like this tab thing up top. And let's say there's like 3 things that the average person is going to do here. They might say, okay, they want to get their license. They might be getting they might be renewing something. And what's a third thing? What's a third thing that people will be doing? Stealing seems aggressive. Why not remixing? Yeah, Mohammed, that's why I see it, is that we're really just remixing old ideas. We're not really stealing. So we might be doing a license renew, or what's a third thing? What do you think when you go to get your car? What is the number one thing that you're doing? I'm gonna say driving it. Yeah. Okay, let's go with permit. I think a lot of kids will get their permit, right? And so as you can see, we kind of have 2 concepts going here. And so maybe what happens here is that there's a different set of things that happen with each form. So it's like, we could say this is the selected form. And as you're going through, a different, and this is a little hack, Option Command C, Option Command V, and then we'll just go over here. So already we're seeing that this is a different approach. And so we can't dive too deep in this because we have time permitted, but I like to show at least 3 different options of how a design can work. Definitely not crashing it. So I like to show at least 3 different options of how a design can work. And we may not want to, because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one concept. You don't want to say, oh, the search bar works the best, so we need to go with that. Or, well, people only do 3 things, so let's just make the 3 things the top part of the action. What some people do is they'll actually go out and A/B test, and they'll say, have you guys ever heard of an A/B test? Or who can explain A/B? Does anybody want to volunteer and explain what an A/B test is? If not, I'll just explain it real quick. So A/B testing is pretty, it's actually exactly what it sounds like. You have an A and a B. And so let's say that this A, we're making an assumption here. It's like science. We're making the assumption that if people use this site, there's going to be a plethora of things that people want to do. Therefore, they're going to want to put in into a search bar, and ideally it comes up. Now, so this is our A. Shoot. All right. This is our A. Now B, we're making the assumption here that actually people just need to do 3 things. Do 3 things. So we're not going to waste their time by basically saying, we don't want them to have that flexibility between going in here and picking that. We want people to just know they want to do license, renewal, or permit. And maybe there will be other functions, but they can search those, but it's pretty rare, and they can call or something like that. And so the whole point is that, like, there's actually not always a right or wrong answer. It's more so what's gonna help the most users. What's the lesser of the 2 evils, or I don't like to say it like that, but one of these is going to be more optimized, but we don't really know until we go out and test that. And we're going to get to testing later. We're not going to do like actual testing here because we don't have that much time to like find somebody and do a test. But the whole point is during this exercise, don't try and be right. Just try and get the ideas out, because in many ways there isn't there is worse designs, but there's not necessarily a wrong step in the wireframe step. So with that said, let's get into visual design. So I know a lot of people probably will enjoy this maybe the most. It's obviously the one that people think the most about, because we're just kind of wired for visual design. And it's one of those things where in the modern world of UI, it's kind of gets overlooked sometimes, because it's hard to be really good at like everything. And so people usually have specialties. And so some people literally just specialize in the user interface, how clean it looks, and giving the interface a specific look and feel. So we could definitely have an entire talk just about visual design. These are kind of like the main core tenets of visual design. It's all kind of based out of the Swiss movement. Swiss modernism is kind of what made our tech industry where it is today, of clean typefaces, functional grid systems, and everything like that. So I don't want to go into every single one of these, but what I've noticed, especially since I've been working with Bootstrap developers over the past few years, is that there's two key elements of visual design that I think most developers ignore. And I think that if you can just do these two right, your designs are going to be way stronger. So if you've been sleeping this entire time, just try and pay attention to these two, and I think that you'll have a much stronger design at the end of the day. Okay, so start with hierarchy, and I have a note section here. And this is where I think we're going to have volunteers again. So ignore the copy, ignore what it's saying. Just look at the structure of how the page is laid out. So between our A and our B here, which one, let's take a vote in the chat, just throw it out real quick. What do you think is easier to read, A or B? Yep, B. Yep, we pretty much have 100% B. So people usually recognize that, right? Like the average person knows that B is much better. But let's take some notes. What do we like about B? What makes it the better design? Structured, yep. More headlines, sections, not a big text, yep. Smaller. So clear what it is. So structured, I'm gonna make note of that one. So structured, sections, yep. Smaller chunks, yep. Clear what it is. These are all true. Colors, yep. Yep. Less strain on the eye. So it's interesting because as we're showing these, right, it seems so obvious which one's better, but so often this is what I see, on the internet. The internet mostly looks like this, and just this very simple difference here, and sometimes it's so subtle that you might not even tell the difference of what we're doing here. But so let's start with just what is different here. So who can tell me the difference between these two colors between the fonts? Can you even tell the difference between these two? Is there something different between the two paragraphs? Yep, lighter gray, exactly. Just that makes a huge difference, because one, when you're on a site and you have to read, especially something at the DMV where you're reading for a long time, it does strain your eye less when there's less light coming through. And so this kind of softer gray is going to just using a softer gray is going to make it much easier for your user to stay on the site and is going to enjoy the experience a lot more. Yeah, why not to use pure? That's a great resource. Thank you, Michelle. Um, you could say, and it's not necessarily it's less important. Um, and just going back to the concept of hierarchy, by making something a little bit less dual doesn't necessarily mean that it's less important. It just means that it's not where your eye goes right away. And so when you see this paragraph on the left, it's just so easy to almost overlook the headline because this is the same color, like it's all pure black, and it's not that much bolder. It's not that much thicker. So it's just so easy for the eye to skip over this and get lost. And here's one of the big secrets, which isn't really a secret, especially as the generations get younger, is that people don't read like this. They tend to skim. So the average person, especially, let's say that you're a father or a mother and you're in a rush and you have to get somewhere fast. You just don't have time to dig out information in a big paragraph like this. So your brain is just scanning, right? So you're thinking, okay, welcome to the DMV. Okay, the DMV can be fun. And let's say that this is license, get it now. So what's going to be much easier for a parent to find? They have to either dig through a giant paragraph or they can just quickly skim a bunch of little paragraphs and their topic is going to be found much, much quicker, And so once again, this all seems very obvious, right? Like it seems like, how could you miss this? But what I'm finding more and more is that sites that come up, especially when there just isn't a consideration for type, they tend to just look like big blocks. And so just by doing this, just by thinking to yourself, let me have a bold headline, maybe make it a different color, and then lighten up my paragraph, it's just that much alone is going to make the design a lot stronger and just easier for the average user. So I know I might be preaching to the choir for some of you, but just keep this in mind, especially when you're starting out, and you'll notice the difference that people will say, "Whoa, this actually works. This actually feels really good." So yeah, structured sections, smaller chunks to read, colors, and this is a little bit overboard with colors. Like I just did it to show how it can be, but usually it'll be probably something like this, even that looks, I think that looks actually maybe even better. So breaking it up. So there you go. So does anybody have any quick questions about hierarchy? I know that was kind of a lot at once. If not, let's move on to alignment. So the easiest way to make sure everything is aligned is to refine your wireframes with the grid. So you'll probably use grids in like the CSS grid. That might be what you're familiar with, but the problem is a lot of people don't. They don't use grids, and the problem with that is that it's almost like, imagine reading a book, and as you're reading the book, one paragraph is on the edge of the page, and then the image is getting cut off, and by not having any structure, you realize that it's like reading a book with as if we just laid out a book with our eyes, and we can't necessarily trust our eyes as much as you can trust the math and logic behind a grid system. And so here's just like a simple tip. Use the material grid system and the layout. And so that really helps with scaling too, because you can see as our design is cascading down, it's going to be really easy for us to go through this and say, okay, so I was over here, I was one column in, now I'm half a column in, but you're still aligned to a focal point. And once you get to mobile, I'm going to stack. And so as you can see, there's a logic behind what we're doing now. Because as much as good as our eyes can be, some of you probably have very good, strong design eyes. By not just using a simple grid like this, we don't have to rely on our eyes. And this might look complicated. I don't know. This could look complicated at first, but once you start doing it, it actually you actually think less about where things are going to go and be placed. So I'm a big proponent of once you've kind of figured out your wireframing and everything, refine it with a grid because you're going to just get more logic. And so I'll post, I'm going to post this resource in here. So definitely check out and read some of this documentation about the material grid, because it's just going to save you a lot of, what's it called, logic, and a lot of headaches if you just go ahead and use a pre-made system. Okay, so now that's vertical grids. Now let's do another activity. So the 8-point grid, and why the 8-point grid I think is a huge lifesaver. So let's look at this real quick. What do we think is wrong with this design? What do we think is missing here? Or is it perfect? If it's perfect, we can move on. But if anybody can find anything, text P, the main title, yeah, P, okay. So it's interesting. I feel like people haven't called out the ones that I thought that you would initially. All right. Well, we're gonna train everybody's eyes. So now I'm gonna add the grid. Check this out. Something that you might not have even noticed. Look at this. So look at the spacing here. Look at how the spacing is different. So look at that. That's this is 58 pixels apart. This is 32. This is 45. And then look at the huge gaps between the images. This is a 78. You know, this is a 54. And so what you're seeing is that the spacing here is just all completely illogical and jumbled. Look, see how this one actually is going off the grid here and is going outside here. And so to the naked eye, it actually might not look too terrible. I mean, it looks like there's some kind of structure. But then once you add both of our grid systems, the 8-point grid and the horizontal grid, it kind of just makes it makes you realize that this is actually just not working. And so now let's think about how we can apply the grid and solve this. So we could, align everything here, or we can basically sit and let's align all of our images. Or we could say, we'd basically, if we're coding this would basically just be its own div, and we'd put some padding around it. And then here, these should all be aligned, and by having the grid as our reference point, it just really cleans it up and gives everything a little bit more order. I can't unsee now. I should have done a before and after, so that we could have seen. In fact, here, how about this? But yeah, now that you see it, and look, there's actually still another one, right? So this is 78. Let's make this an 80. And now, basically everything, I'm sure there's still a mistake in here, but now everything, oh, here we go. Look, see, this is way off. You guys see that? And this could go up to, 32. This one can go up to 32. And a lot of you all probably might be doing this in code right now. And to me, it doesn't matter if it's done in code or in Figma. It's just a matter of making sure that there's logic behind the design and the UI. And so just by kind of by using these two systems, this is the vertical grid and this is the horizontal grid. Everything is just, yes, it's more consistent. It's more, look, that's 80. And look at this. This is 80. Everything is clean. And think about this in the standpoint of trust. If we're going to our DMV website and all of a sudden there's an image way over here and then the spacing is crazy and then everything's disaligned, are you likely to trust that? Or do you think you're about to get into a phishing? You think you're about to get phished for, a ton of money? Because when you start paying attention to these little things, it just makes things feel cleaner and better, it's one of those kind of it seems trivial, but then once you start doing it, it really just makes everything come together. So that's it. And this is the scaling that Material will give you. Not everybody agrees with this. At Apple, they just didn't really care about this at all. They just figured everybody's eye was sharp enough to figure out their own system. But I use this. And so everything that I put on the page is always going to fall within that system of the 8-point grid. So it's really easy in Figma. All you do is hold Option, and then you can hold Shift, and then you can go up 10, below 10, and it's just really easy to see how like being this precise with our UI can make things really sharp and crisp. So Material, yeah. So Material, I could probably do a whole talk on Material. Since we're here and I think it's related, I'll stop sharing this for a second, and we can talk briefly about why I think, as developers especially, developers really like material design. Especially many of you are doing your own projects on your own, and Material is epic. So I'm going to show you guys this resource one more time, just so that you have it in your back pocket. So when you're doing visual design or you're setting up grid systems, a lot of the work has been done for us already. So think about like when you're doing layout and pixel density, there's no reason to make this stuff up on your own. People have already solved all these problems. They said, how does type scale work? How big should your H1s and H2 should be? So to me, it always makes sense to start with a design system. And these are all the rage in software now, where it's like you'll have the Google. This is made by Google, but then you'll also have the human interface guidelines made by Apple. Then you'll have like the IBM system and everything. And so to me, I'll put a link in the chat. Always start with a system if you can, because there's no reason for you to build this gigantic app and then have to do all that mental work that Material has already solved for you. So think about that like Vue or React, or Bootstrap. They've already done all that work, so there's no reason for you to be doing that work on your own. Okay, so back to Figma. So we're going to do our last interactive segment, which is prototyping and testing. This is one of my favorite quotes. Once you find the problem, the solution is pretty obvious. So much people always say like, yeah, Material UI for React, Material Angular. Well, yep, exactly. So a lot of people always fall in love with the solution to a problem. They always think like, oh, my solution is so good, and all of a sudden they test it in the real world and they realize like, oh shoot, nobody knows how to use my app. Nobody knows how to find the buttons. It's confusing. The visual design is awful or something. And so the whole point is that you should try and think of as many solutions as you can and test different things, because unlike in the days of print, software is very malleable, and it's always changing. And every week, there could be an insight that says we need to change the entire product that we're building. So we need to pivot and try something else. So people have a lot of different opinions on this. A lot of people say you only need 5 users to find most problems. And so the whole point is that like a rule of thumb is basically, there's been some award fans here. So a lot of people think that like once you've tried out 5 different users of your product, then everything that you've tried out has all the kinks have been worked out. Like, oh, people don't know how to sign up, or oh, nobody knows to touch this button when they get to the end of the form. And so a rule of thumb is that try at least 5, but modern thinking is also sometimes keep testing your product until there's no more problems. And so there's definitely a lot of disagreement about this, but when you're still learning or you're just testing ideas on your own, you can just find 5 friends and family. So maybe your brother he's getting his permit and you want to test out your app, or maybe your mom needs to renew her license, and you want to test out the app. And like I said here, like everybody needs to drive. So pretty much our audience here is the whole world, or all of America at least, and whatever the Canadian equivalent of the DMV is. So start with at least 5 people, and if you can get more and you keep finding problems, just keep going. Okay, so this is kind of the last thought here, and I know many of you might disagree with this, but many of you are really fast at coding, and you can probably build an HTML prototype in 2 hours. But I wanted to show you just how fast you can build a prototype in Figma if you want to test out an idea. So look, if I go to the prototype mode, look at that. I just built a prototype, and given not a great prototype, but I was able to make an interaction in about 5 seconds. And so to me, I think it's important to realize just like the speed that you can work with when you're using a design software. And obviously this is a very simple example, but people can build robust prototypes that feel like real apps just from working at Figma. And all you have to do is connect a few anchor points, and you have yourself a working prototype. So I think, yes, if you can code, if you're one of those extreme coders and you can code like HTML prototypes in an hour, do it. That's fine. But don't overlook the power of just kind of going into a tool and testing an idea before you go out and code it, especially if you're still learning how to code. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it from the interactive side. I have a few closing thoughts. So there's no perfect process, but I hope this kind of gives you a baseline for you to start off of. I'm gonna put this in the Curious chat, and hopefully everybody can use this document whenever they want to. Don't be scared to start designing. The more you do it, the better you get, just like coding. Nobody's an expert at design either. There's always going to be somebody better than you. And so if you just get 10% better than you were a month ago, then you're already better than most developers out there. And so you're able to bootstrap and build things really fast. And build what you want to see in the world. So the great thing about this industry is that there's actually no such thing as every problem being solved. And so you're going to have work for your entire life because there's never going to be a day that you wake up and say, oh, isn't it great that they solved every problem? Yeah, it's great. So you're just be happy that you're in a field that is growing like crazy, and that you have a lot of opportunity. Think about like when we were building the Curious website, we're thinking about all those problems. Like, I could go on forever, but with COVID and everything, we had a whole section dedicated to just COVID when that started, and just all the other things that have been going on. So there's no shortage of problems, and you guys are the future, which is awesome to think about, that you all are going to solve some amazing things in your lifetime that we can't even think of right now, which is cool. So that's kind of my closing thoughts. Are there any questions? So that I guess I'll just open up for questions in the chat. There may be questions, there may not be, but I'll do a few minutes of question answer if anybody wants to type or say anything out loud. Are you a UI or UX designer? Yeah, so that's a good question. The term UI UX designer, or the specialty of just a UI or UX designer, is kind of, I'd say it's kind of going out of style in many ways. So that's why I'm technically a product designer. And what's happening now is there's this framework called Scrum that most software is built under. And basically the expectation is that the software has gotten so good and the education has gotten so good that everybody has to do both UI and UX design. But if I had to say within the specialty of UI and UX, I'd say I'm better at UI, and I enjoy UI more. But at the same time, like I can be dangerous at UX. Like I can run like a usability testing session and do all the UX things that I have, like, I've put up templates for UX on Figma and everything. So I lean more towards UI for sure. All right. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of being a designer?
I mean, obviously broadly, it's the problem solving aspect. I think it's cool because, and this is one of those things that you'll find, is that there's a lot of products that are developed very well. Like the code is solid. The coding is essentially perfect, but it's the design of the app that is why people go back to it. And so I like the thought that, like, there's this big problem in the world. Let's say that it's customer support, like with Zendesk, and some designer just made a UI that makes that problem easier. And so, like, I just like the gratification of, like, a concept that was once this abstract problem is now solved by something that you can tangibly make in real time. And so it's like just knowing that you ideally help somebody make something easier and made the world a little bit less difficult for people. We kind of take that for granted now that everything is becoming, the phrase software is eating the world. It seems like everything's easier now. How did you choose this career? Yeah, what's up, Steven?
I wanted to follow up on the question and ask, so for you, the rewarding part, is it, like when I code, the rewarding part is when I see my sort of idea come to reality. So for you, is it as well as that, like you have an idea of, like, you test out different designs and finally have that one, and then it's like a aha moment, and then that's like the part that feels rewarding? Or is it more even later when you actually get to have users and they test out your design?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like when the idea that you first have gets coded, even if no user has tested it, there's this amazing feeling of, like, oh, I can't believe that my design's out there and everybody's gonna love it. And then it might crash and burn, and you're like, oh gosh. But I have made things that were successful, and yeah, you're right. I think that is like the top of the happiness, is like something went out into the world and people are actually using it. Like when I was working at Radar, and people were using this widget that I made, and people got a lot of value out of it, and I was like, dang, this thing actually made something easier, and they're enjoying it. Like it's almost like an art form. It's like people are enjoying the thing that you did and you put out in the world. So yeah, I think you're right. Like when people are using it and they're enjoying it, that's where a lot of the gratification comes from. Like more than just putting out in the world and hoping that it does really well. Oh yeah. So Emily says, how did you choose this career? So I think what's interesting about design is that it's not really, or specifically, or another way to formulate, how did you get into product design? Yeah. So most people, when they grow up, they might be interested in art and design, but it's usually from the artistic standpoint. And that's usually where the training comes in, because education hasn't really caught up with interface design yet. So for me, I just liked art, like I enjoyed making comics and making logos and posters and, skateboard graphics and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I need to actually, yeah. So I was like, wait a minute, I need to actually have a career in design. But what am I going to do? And at first I was like, oh, people make the apps, like there's somebody actually laying this stuff out. And then I was working at an agency, but I saw in the distance this like rapidly expanding field of software and product design. And I was like, how do I get into it? And so I took a very low salary at a startup, and I had an amazing design director who pretty much taught me everything about UX and product design and user testing and everything. And from there, I just like really started to love it, and been doing it for a while now. So I think it's one of those things where the education isn't there, and that's kind of similar to Curious, is that the in tech came up really fast. It's one of those things that's only been really around since the 90s, maybe 80s, in its current form, it's only 15 years old, and so we're on the cusp of something that's rapidly expanding and taking over the world, essentially. So we're the education isn't great to get into it. You kind of have to wiggle your way in, and I think that's why it's great that everybody's here and that everybody's learning on their own, because even if you go to school and you study computer science, a lot of those computer science majors don't know how to code at a professional level. They have to learn at an internship or do personal projects that you guys are doing. So I think it's good that you guys are out here like experimenting on your own, All right. Is there anything else? All right. Well, okay. Here, can you show us some of your work? Let's see. How dangerous is this to show some of my work? I'll show you guys something kind of interesting. I think one of the more fun things that I've done recently. I really like. I'd like to show my Apple stuff but it's not legally I can't show it yet. But I think it would be more interesting than I'm about to show. But so I really like. Or I was really into crypto for a while. A window. So this is one of those more like DIY things where it's me and just a bunch of developers making it. But the UI is so unique, it kind of feels like Spotify. But I think what's kind of interesting about this UI is that it's just so raw and has a unique style to it. And just the concept is so different to me than your average like exchange. And so I just like how this was like an experiment. And so you can do everything that these big exchanges can do on this widget, but you don't have to give up custody. Yeah, the font was very interesting. It's the same font as Robinhood. And I have a few qualms. I didn't choose everything here. Like there are some of the mistakes that we mentioned. Like I think the hierarchy could have been better, but I was working within an existing system. But I think what's cool about this is that I can easily trade tokens just like this. And think about when you want to trade on Coinbase or something like that. You have to go through all these layers and put in your bank account and everything. If you connect your wallet to this app that we built, you can just start trading currency directly from your browser. And to me, that's cool because it means that basically you don't have to go through any layers to start trading capital and making money. I have to like get my wallet set up and everything, but I think this is one of the more like experimental things that we worked on, which is pretty fun. So yeah, I'll try and share some more interesting work when it comes up in the Curious chat, but I'm pretty excited about where I'm at now. I'm actually no longer at Elephant, which is kind of funny because I know that the whole talk was advertised around that, but I actually changed jobs last week. So now I'm trying to make investing in small businesses easier for people. So it's a different problem. So let me share this. So I hope this was all helpful. Feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions. I'm also in the chat too, like the Discord. So just send me a DM. Like my name is obviously just Nathan Covert. I know that I'm very early. I hope that the Curious team doesn't punish me for being like very early on this talk. But Leo, Steven, do you all have anything else to say before we head out?
I think today was amazing and I learned a lot. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. I want to ask one more question. Just I'm not gonna go into design, but it still is a really interesting field to me. So like from maybe some of our other participants might consider going to design. So can you share a bit with us like what a day in the life would look look like, and like how is the workload? Is it stressful? A bit of, yeah, a bit of all of that.
Yeah, I mean it's so different. Where and the thing is, I've done a lot of like contracting work and agency work. It really depends on where you're gonna go. Um, I think if my advice or and the common advice now is to go to a mid-sized tech company, meaning bigger than a startup but smaller than Google. And you can think about that as like Coinbase, you know, or Robinhood, or Figma, or maybe GitHub. I guess GitHub's owned by Microsoft now. But the thing is, it's good. To me, when I was at Apple, for example, it was just so many designers on the team because Apple has money to throw at everything. So it's like you'll have, you know, tons of designers working on one thing, and you're kind of have a smaller piece of the pie that you're actually working on. But then now I'm actually the only designer in the company, so it's a true startup. And so even though my workload is much bigger, it doesn't feel as much like work to me. It feels like I'm having fun because I have more part of the creative process. So to me, I think it's really going to vary about like where you go. But if you want to just make a ton of money, you could just go to like one of those big tech companies, and they'll probably hire you because they need like a billion developers at all times. But if you want the creative challenge and you want to have more control of the product, obviously a startup or a mid-sized company where is going to be the best. And at the mid-sized companies, which I don't know if I've considered myself ever working for one, but I can see the appeal of having just enough designers where you have support, but not too many where you get swallowed up and you're a small fish in a giant pond. So, yeah, does that answer the question, Steven? I don't know.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, well, unless if there's any last questions, I guess we can end this talk. I'll post this entire thing that we just looked at for view access, so anybody can kind of like take a look at this in the curious chat. And yeah, thank you all for coming. This was pretty fun. It was good. I know I can't believe it was like 2.5 hours before. I know we went for like an hour and a half, so at least we got a good session, and it's about as long as a work day. Great. Cool. All right. Any closing words, Leo?
Nope, we're all good. But just remind everyone that the Curious Nautic Pyramid Scheme prize is still up for grabs. So
Oh, I didn't know about this.
share our posts for a
Ooh.
chance to win some cool stuff.
All right. All right, everybody. I guess we're gonna end this one.
Yeah.
What's up?
I think just make sure to tag us if you share it on Instagram or Facebook, and that's the way we're gonna know you're gonna be eligible for the prize. But yeah, that's all. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. See ya.